and then of course take the sharp end of your stick bait and actually drop it down in there. That's going to allow you to run a O-ring down onto the worm a lot easier. Is find you some screws, some decent size, decent weight screws with a nice head on it, and shove that guy in there. Take your time, make sure you screw it in there straight. So for a Neko rig, you want to actually start off with this is just like a basic circle hook, but this particular hook is got a weed guard on it. There's quite a few different designs for a weedless weed guard. You don't have to use a weed guard. I prefer a weed guard because I do fish a lot of grass, a lot of structure. That's going to help you from getting hung up quite a bit. So don't have to have it, but it helps. You can do this with all kinds of different finesse worms. I love a senko or a sanko or a stick bait, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate this on to you, is with a stick bait. So to rig it, you can either just puncture it straight through and kind of sitting on top, right, like this. You could do it kind of the wacky rig style, but after a while you're going to tend to tear up your bait. And if you want to make your bait last a lot longer, here's a trick. Find your little pin or marker, some of the little clicky pins that are pretty big bodied, you know, something that you can take the cap off of or unscrew, and then of course take the sharp end of your stick bait and actually drop it down in there. That's going to allow you to run a O-ring down onto the worm a lot easier. And you want kind of a snugging fit O-ring that's not going to slip. So this is going to help a lot. So here's our O-ring, and as you can see, the diameter of the stick bait is a little bit bigger. Preload your O-ring onto your cap. Get your stick bait in and slide it down over till you get it onto the meat of the actual bait. See there? Now run it down to pretty much close. Some of them have a little block or what they call the egg sac, whatnot. That's where we want to go on this. So about there, maybe a little over halfway. See? There we go. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our hook, and instead of puncturing our worm, we're going to put it underneath the O-ring, between the O-ring and the worm. So now, as you can see, we're not going to be tearing up our worm as much when we set the hook. That O-ring is going to be pretty resilient, and it's going to hold on to that bait. Now, one cool thing about the Neko rig is this is a finesse bait that we're going to keep tension on it. So we're going to keep this thing barely touching the ground, but what's going to be cool is we need to weight this thing. Now, there's a lot of different weights you can use. They make worm weights that you can actually push up in there, little stick weights that you can shove in there and bury in there. Not all of us can run down to the bait store and just grab these weights, or some of our bait stores don't have them. So what do? Well, I've seen guys take split shots, different types of split shots, and even some of your bullet style weights, and just shove them straight in and just kind of bury them in there. Another quick, easy way that I've seen done, and actually I like this route a lot better than others, is find you some screws, some decent size, decent weight screws with a nice head on it, and shove that guy in there. Now, one cool thing about that is A, it could add a little bit of flash, a little bit more color to it. B, it's going to grip in there really well. You can just screw it in, like I'm going to do here. Take your time, make sure you screw it in there straight. Not bad. But now what you've done is you've actually pegged that worm. So now this thing is going to hit, and as it falls, this tail end is going to stick up and kind of float down a little slower. Give you that cool action that we love about a senko or finesse worm. But now this guy is pegged out, and it's going to hit and sit on the bottom. Well, what's really cool about having that screw, or even some of them worm weights with the head on them, that's going to impact rocks and other debris and make a clicking and a popping sound, which is going to give the cool action of this bait some sound now, more sound than it had before. So go ahead and cast this thing out. You can fish it in rock, you can fish it around structure, and all you're going to do is just let it sink to the bottom, pull it up to where you barely feel tension on it. You don't want it to lay on the ground, but you want it to still, you'll feel it pop, and you'll just just jig it back slightly. Just give it slight twitches and run it back. And that bait is going to bounce around off the bottom, make a clicking sound, and that worm is going to have the neatest falling action, and it's going to almost stand there. And that is how I rig up a Neko rig.